listening to Clarity on Fire, a podcast for people who know what they don't want out of their life and career, but aren't sure what they'd rather be doing.
In a world where it's easy to exist, but hard to feel alive, we, Kristen
and Rachel,
two certified life and career coaches, are here to help you cut through the information overload, get unstuck, and focus not just on how you can have a career you're passionate about, but how to create a whole life that feels fulfilling.
So join us here, where we serve up inspiration and down-to-earth wisdom in a way that only two best friends can.
We want you to experience the relief of knowing that, yes, you're allowed to want more out of your life and career.
And no, you don't have to wander through the dark anymore. Our job is to light the fire that shows you the way. Let's go. Hello.
Hey.
Oh, this is going to be a very fun conversation. I'm excited for you to hear this, Kristen, not just
me?
Yeah, because I know you like Kim because you've been on a Zoom with her at least once before.
I do.
And she's fun, isn't she?
Yes, I enjoy. She has a big personality and you can tell right away. I love it.
She does. That's why her and I got along so well. Is we are kind of two peas in a pod. Speaking of which, today is Scarlett's birthday and you just got her a pea pod.
I did. I got her a little plush toy that's a pea pod and has 3 little peas in there, like just little squeak balls. And she loved it.
It's like you Velcro them into the pea pod and then they have to get them out. And she loved it for like 5 minutes and then she got bored. But
like any dog or child, but you know, it'll get interesting again from time to time. Every year on her birthday, I get her a new toy and some are more successful than others. This was a pretty successful one.
Let me clarify that today, the day you're listening, is not her birthday. It's the day we're recording is her birthday.
Mm-hmm. You can still wish her a happy belated birthday.
She's 11 years old. She's the best looking 11-year-old dog I've ever seen.
I remember driving down to North Carolina the day you got her.
To pick her up, I know.
11 years ago. Crazy.
We're so old now, and so is she.
Anyway, let's get back to Kim.
Can't tell her that. So
sorry we derailed your conversation, Kim, with dog updates, but who doesn't like a good dog update?
Kim likes this podcast. She knows what to expect. Okay. Would you like to read Kim's bio?
I would. Kim has always been open to taking risks, and she isn't afraid to step out and try new things. She joined the Army at 17, moved to Dallas when she got out, and made a life for herself without knowing anyone personally. All she knew was that she had a cousin there and figured that she'd make it work. Kim was pulled into project management in 2016 and really liked it. But after getting PMP certified and leaving that employer, things still weren't glamorous. After reaching a breaking point, she reached out to Clarity on Fire after listening for years to the podcast. And like many at the beginning of coaching, Kim had family issues, work issues, and the isolation from COVID hadn't helped. Today, Kim is at a much better organization. She may not be 100% in love with her work, but she knows that the career journey is a never-ending cycle, and she's ready to keep taking risks in this new phase of life and use the tools she learned while working with Rachel to move onwards and upwards.
What I like about that is she was like, listen, I'm going to tell you right now, I am not 100% in love with my job. And yet we had this really great conversation. And there was a part where she was like, are you still coaching me like during the conversation? And I kind of was. And she kind of loved it. But like, even in the bio, it's like, yes, you are never going to get to like 100% joyful and satisfied. And that's okay. And you don't have to be at 100% to get your groove back.
Yeah. What if it's just a constant cycle of getting better and closer and closer?
Yeah.
And that's the point.
Yeah.
That means you're doing it right.
Yeah. I
Love
think
it.
you're really going to like this. Everyone is going to like this conversation. So enjoy, and we will pop back in at the end. Hi, Kim.
Hey, Rachel.
I'm excited to be back because this is only our second episode after our hiatus. So hello, we're back. And
Yay.
I'm really happy that you're my first normal person interview of the year. It feels like a good, I don't know, it feels like good energy to start the year with is you.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. You don't know how much that means a lot to me. You're a very special person.
Oh, but so are you. I just love you. You've got the best energy too. So, well, whatever. That's probably why we found each other, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you and I were talking before we hit record about, all right, what's what are we going to get into? And what I really want to talk about is how you got your groove back. And I feel like that's kind of a corny saying, but it really describes the journey that you've been on. So I want to go back. I'm not sure when. We can go back as far back as you want to go. But I would love for you to share as much as you want to share about like, how did you lose your groove? Did you ever have it and then you lost it? How did you end up? Okay. How did you end up grooveless? Can we start there?
Jeez. I think it's one of those things where it starts small and then it snowballs. And honestly, I was having some family issues, kind of a mother-daughter thing going on. And then in combination with that, I was having problems with work. I wasn't really satisfied with work. And I was at a big institution, and it was normal for people to want to move around, change departments and whatnot. And it seems like I had just gotten stuck in this department and I couldn't get out. And I did get out. I landed somewhere else with a friend, got me on in her group, and I thought it was going to be great. That it wasn't. It wasn't great. And then they were downsizing. They offered us packages, took the package. And I was like, okay, I'm known to be a risk taker. I didn't really have a true plan, but I just thought, as always, I'll figure it out. And so I left and got some more certifications and landed some jobs. And I kind of ended up I'm a project manager now. And then I got my Scrum Master certification. So I kind of ended up going down this IT path intentionally, but unintentionally, sort of too. And one job would lead to another for a variety of reasons. Either the contract would end or something, better opportunity would come along. And then I got to this one place as a consultant. And I have never worked with such crazy people in my life. And to the point where I actually did end up using that your employer offered you the assistance. What is it called? AE.
Like counseling at work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so I ended up using those sessions. And it was actually, COVID was underway as well. And so companies were even offering extended sessions because people were really kind of, going through with the whole COVID and being at home and the isolation. And so I had to end up with a really great counselor, and she helped me out a lot. And so that was great, but work was just still really crazy. And so going back to how did I get grooveless? I mean, it just seemed to continue to spiral where things were not great with family, things were not great with work. And then I had some friendships that I just felt like this is taking way more energy to be friends with you. But they were long-term friendships. And so like 20, 30 years. And it was like a hard breakup. It was like I'm making a decision on, do I break up with these friends or not? It was just two. But I felt like, okay, am I just losing it with everybody? Is it me? What's going on? So I just continued to feel like I was drowning. And I've always listened to you and Kristen. I've always listened to the podcast. And so one day I just said, you know what? I can't take this anymore. I gotta get some help. And so that's when I reached out, because I really felt like so much of my personal life was carrying over into my work life. And so I think that was a combination of where I just was like, I'm sabotaging myself,
Mm-hmm.
and if I don't do something, everything's going to fall apart,
Yeah.
And So it was over a period of time that I lost my groove.
Yeah, you don't ever lose your groove all at once. It is like a wave, and then you can't recover quite from that wave before another wave hits you, and you just keep getting battered to the point where, yeah, at some point you just feel like you're drowning. And when you're at that point, you lose pretty much all of your perspective. Like, you have no idea where the problem is. I mean, at some point, if you're like underwater, you sometimes don't even know what direction is up. Like, am I
Right.
swimming down or am I
Right.
swimming up?
Right.
And it at that point, yeah, it was good that you brought in some outside perspective so that we could sort through it all, and we did. And I want to go through like, how did we do that? Because I think other people can relate to feeling battered on all the fronts and feeling lost and feeling like, I don't even know how to diagnose the problem because it just happened in such a steady drip, and now it's all falling apart. Where do I even begin? And the idea of confronting it all is really overwhelming. Okay. To the degree that you're comfortable talking about this, like you have authority over whatever you say or don't say, I think a lot of people, and I want to hit this point home more and more on the podcast because it just happens all the time in coaching that I see people just taking the blueprint that they got from childhood and they're just copying and pasting it on the rest of their life, on their romantic relationships, sometimes on their friendships, at work. So I'm curious, because you brought up the self-sabotage and you brought up the family dynamics, and we all have them. How did you see yourself kind of copying and pasting some of those childhood patterns and some of those maybe like unhealthy parental patterns onto how you showed up at work?
Ooh. I thought you were going to ask me something else. And I was prepared. I was prepared for that, but I wasn't prepared for this question.
Well, you can answer that one too. Whatever you thought I was going to ask, you can answer that first if you want to.
I thought you were going to ask me, how did it show up in my personal life and like with my relationships? And so
you can start there.
So I will say, I mean, I know this is going to sound really weird, but I felt like, so I'm divorced, but the person I married, and this is going to sound weird, but if anybody's been in this situation, they'll understand. I married a person that was a lot like my mother. Now, he wasn't a feminine guy, so I don't want anybody to take it that way, but they had a lot of personality traits. Okay. And it wasn't, of course, until after I got married until we really started having problems. And then I looked at him and I thought, oh my God. And then they got along great, you know.
Of course.
They got along great. And so I think we don't realize we're doing it, but you do bring people into your life that mirror those things that sometimes you're trying to avoid. It's like when you keep picking the same guy, you know, and maybe you don't know why. And I think in my case, I mean, that was, and not so much that that's what attracted me to him, but I ended up realizing that's how he was. And I was like, God, how odd is that, right? As far as work, I really became a people pleaser. I know you hear that a lot. I became a people pleaser because I was always trying to please my mom, right? And so you carry that part around with you as well, where you're wanting to make sure everybody else is good, everybody's happy. But then when they're not, then you take that personally. You know, that can turn into anger. It can turn into not trusting yourself, feeling like you can't make a good decision. And so the whole time you're trying to make everyone else happy, it just wears you down. And I don't want to make it sound like, you know, my whole, you know, the last few years have just been doom and gloom. They've not. But I just realized, I knew I needed to get help because my personal life was, it was starting to transcend over into my work life. And I knew if I didn't get a handle on myself, that possibly just, wouldn't have a job or couldn't keep a job because I was either angry or frustrated or whatever. And then there goes into the part also of not falling into this tech world where I'm not really a tech person. So I had another thought. I mean, and one of the things, this is maybe off topic a little bit, but one of the things I found out about myself too, and this may be the whole an only child syndrome thing, is that I always make friends, right? A lot of my friends I've made have been through work, church or work. So when COVID comes and you're working at home and you're starting a new job, and some people you may have never met before, or you're not going into the office, there's no, let's go to the break room and get a cup of coffee, or let's go to the cafeteria, da 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 da. And so that started to weigh on me as well, because I didn't have those friendships. I didn't have those people to go, and you may have had a bad day or had an argument with someone, but you go to work, you see your friends, you can gloss over all of that, at least for those 8 to 10 hours. Well, when you're at home and it's just you and your computer and video, and sometimes not even video, because some people don't even do video at work. So you're looking at your screen, but just only hearing voices come out. So none of that helped at all. And it just snowballed into, I felt like I was losing it.
Okay, let's unpack all of that. So first of all, no, it's not odd to marry a version of one of your parents. So many people do this. I think it's more common than not, especially if when you get married, you're not as conscious or aware as you are now. I mean, you would never do that again. But at the time, it's what feels familiar. We're attracted to what feels familiar.
I agree.
I can't remember who said it, so I feel bad for not quoting this, but properly or attributing it properly. But I love the quote that's, if your home was dysfunctional, then dysfunction will feel like home. And so we just attract, and it's because it's familiar, but it's also because on some level, I think we're trying to work out the problem with that person that we can't work out with the mom or with the dad. And we're thinking, again, all unconsciously, if I can fix him, or if I can get him to love me, or him to treat me right, or him to acknowledge me, then maybe it'll be like my mom finally made me feel seen or loved or heard. And so that's not weird at all. It happens all the time. So of course, and of course it showed up in your relationship with your friends too.
Yeah. Yeah. And there were some friends that I kept we stayed friends way longer than I wanted to, because you don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And so you hang in there. It's kind of like what you do. Like, you can't get rid of your family. Your family's going to be whether you have a relationship with them or not. They're still your parents. They're still your sisters, cousins, whoever, right? And so, but I just felt like, okay, I just didn't want to be the bad person and do the breakup thing. I didn't want to end it, because you don't do that. And I cared about them and loved them, but it just, toxic is the wrong word, but it just wasn't, it wasn't working. And so learning how to set boundaries for myself is something I really had to do. And even in the relationships that I didn't let go, I've just had to learn how to set those boundaries and learn how to control myself, and learn how to control me, because you can't control other people.
Well, that's the people pleasing, is where's the line between me and other people? And as an only child, I think that's even harder, because your pattern growing up was, I've got to go outside of myself in order to find people to connect with. I'm in a household where I'm being enabled to people please all the time because I'm living with a difficult personality. And you combine those, and of course you show up at work and you're like, please just like me and be my friend. And I want to connect with you. But I also think you're kind of crazy. I don't know where. I think that you struggled, as a lot of people I coach do, with where's the line between I just don't like this and this isn't aligned with me, and how am I making my experience here harder because of the baggage that I am projecting onto it? Like, my need for connection and loneliness is making me cling to people or making me stay here when I don't like these people, or I don't really want to be here. Or like I'm having a hard time telling people no or setting boundaries, and I feel overworked or underappreciated, but I'm probably enabling that to some degree. I think people really struggle to know like what's my responsibility and what's just not a fit. So I'm curious to hear like your thoughts on you trying to navigate that line between what was mine, what was my stuff, like what was stuff that I was probably bringing and making it harder on myself, and what was just not my stuff.
I've always been pretty good at knowing when, being accountable, right? And knowing, okay, if I said something that maybe I shouldn't have said, or I've got that face. I don't have a poker face, right? So I know sometimes I can give you the look like you can see my face and tell my thoughts. So I've always been pretty good at saying, hey, I'm sorry. I know I stepped over I crossed the line, or probably shouldn't have said that. And, accept my apology, that kind of thing. So and that's why I think, Rachel, when people tell me, oh, I didn't know when I said XYZ that it made you feel that way. No, yes, you did. Because there may be a time or two, or maybe you don't, but for the most part, I think people know when they're acting out. They know when they're saying or doing something. This is just my belief now. Because if you're an adult and you have feelings, you know what I'm saying? If you're a rational human being, adult, when you're saying things that could hurt someone else's feelings. So when someone comes at me with this, oh, I didn't realize, I push back on that, because I know when I do that, right? And so I really think it's a matter of, do you want to be responsible for what you said? Or do you want to give an excuse for, well, it's the classic, well, you made me. If you hadn't have done such and such, then I wouldn't have done such and such. Well, but that was your choice. And so I use that same thing with myself. I know I made a conscious choice to say or do what I did. And then you have to take responsibility for that. And most people don't want to take responsibility for that. They rather just say, it's kind of your fault. You made me cuss you out. You made me slam the door. You made me do whatever. Did that answer?
What's funny is that it's actually making a point that I wasn't trying to get at, but that's fine, because that's what a podcast is all about, is we don't know where it's going to go. But inadvertently, I think what you're making a point about, a lot of people I work with, and you're one of them, are almost too responsible for themselves. Like, you'll take credit and you'll take ownership even when you don't need to, like to the point where you're like, I must be the reason that I'm struggling at this job, when sometimes like it's actually not your fault.
You're right. I'm still getting therapy while I'm on the podcast. You're right.
We'll stick around longer at that job because we're like, oh, it's probably me, like I just need to be calmer, or I need to like set better, I just need to say it differently, and maybe that person will hear it. Like, we're very good at that, to the point where sometimes we won't just call it like it is and be like, no, this just sucks, and I don't have to like it, and I don't have to make it work.
True.
I love how much you're laughing at yourself right now.
I am, because apparently I still do. I'm still wired a certain kind of way.
Of course. Yeah.
Still wired a certain kind of way.
We're not going to change who you are. And it's good. Like, you would rather, most people listening would rather be someone who has the ability to take responsibility for what's not working. That's empowering to a degree, because it means, all right, well, I could change this. I don't want to be someone who plays the victim. I don't want to be someone who blames other people, but we often take it too far, and we'll just try to power through things that suck and try to make things work that we shouldn't. That's why we'll stick around in marriages or friendships that aren't treating us well, because we don't want to be the bad guy. We don't want to push blame on anybody else.
Yeah.
So it's a good point that we sort of didn't mean to make, but that we're making, is that being responsible for yourself doesn't mean that you can't just call a spade and say, but this just sucks. This relationship, it just sucks. This job, it just sucks. It's not all on me to make it better.
Right. Right. You're right.
She's right again.
She's right again. That's why I love you so much. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a whole other facet of our working together that I found fascinating and I want to get into, because I think it's a big ingredient in how you got your groove back. So one of the ways you got your groove back might be like, you know what? I'm not going to keep taking responsibility for 100% of everything. Like, not the 100% of the job sucking is not on me. 100% of my friendships being difficult is not on me. Like my 100% of my relationship with my mom is not mine to solve. Like I am in a relationship with all of these things. Nothing can 100% be my responsibility.
Right.
That's a huge weight lifted off of a person. It's a huge ingredient into getting momentum and energy and groove back, is releasing that responsibility. Another thing is that you and I had this really fascinating conversation around faith. And as I remember it, you can tell me if I've got it right. Like, you've always been a person of faith. Like, you have gone to church, you are Christian. And I was like, I find it so interesting that you are someone who would 100% up and down swear, I'm a believer, but you're not acting like one. I don't see you behaving as if you really believe God, the universe, doesn't matter what we call it, has my back, that I am supported. And I'm like, if you say you're a believer, I think you're going to need to act like one if you want to see things in your life start to change. And that was kind of like a very loving, I don't think I meant it to be, but it was kind of ended up being interpreted as a very loving bitch slap. That's how I feel like you took it. And you really ran with it.
Well, when you said that to me, I was like, I said, wow, I can't believe, first, like, kind of like you said, I can't believe she said that. But then I'm like, she's right. And you're right. It's, I don't know if hypocritical is the right word or what it is, but that we pray, we go to church, we do all these things, but we don't necessarily live our lives. We don't live our lives out based on what we say we believe, right? And I've always felt like I didn't have to worry. God had my back. But I think I just got so caught up. I think you just forget, right? And,
you get focused on surviving and just going through the motions.
And for me, I can't speak for others. I started just relying on myself, right? I started trying to get myself right. And I wasn't relying on God,
Back to taking 100% of the responsibility. It's all on me.
I was relying on myself to fix it. And you're right. That was one of the most eye-opening parts of our meetings and our talks. And I think shortly after that, you pointed me to the book, Outrageous Openness. That changed my life.
Okay, I can't wait to talk about this. So hold on. We're going to talk about outrageous openness, and we're going to go through some of the magical things that have happened, because I want you to outline some of them and maybe tell like a little bit of a New Orleans story, however much you want to tell.
Okay.
Of that. That was great. But I want to just pause and let this sink in for people, because this is not just a you thing. And it doesn't matter if someone has like a pre-established belief system or not. Like, whether they would call themselves spiritual or whether they would call themselves religious in some way. I think one of the most common things is that we have a huge divide between like intellectually understanding something and sort of like conceptually saying we believe it, but there's absolutely no bridge between that and embodying it. and really living as if it's true. I've heard it said recently, again, I don't know who said this, but it's good. It's the difference between reading a menu and eating a meal. Like you were reading the Bible, the menu that was the Bible and church and sermons and church people. But there wasn't a lot of actually eating the meal or ordering, like there was no ordering happening. There was no consuming happening.
I have a thought and I'm semi-nervous to say it out loud.
Oh, no. Don't.
But I think a lot of people that go to church, that I can say that in my circle that I've, witnessed and seen, people go to church. So to some degree, it's kind of a thing you do. It's what you do on Sunday. It's what you do on Wednesday night. It's what you do whatever day of the week you serve or you worship. And you go, and sometimes it's a checkbox. Okay, I got that done. But it's to your point. You're reading the menu, but you're not eating off of the menu. You're just you're doing this because I've always done it. I've always gone to church, and you believe. We believe that if you're a Christian, it's that Jesus came, died for your sins, rose. That's what we believe, right? But we don't act it out. We act in fear instead. And we don't trust. And I think sometimes it's just you get so caught up in life. And to your point, conceptually, we don't put it into practice. Or it's kind of like back when people say, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Busy was like that tag word. Well, then it became, oh God, I'm trying not to worry about this. Oh, pray for me. Pray that this, or pray. Instead of us having belief, instead of us saying, okay, I know that He's got me. I don't have to worry. I don't have to fret. And however it works out is going to work out for my good. I think that's the place we really should be, is that, okay, it doesn't mean because you're a Christian that bad things are not going to happen. But it's just knowing, okay, and believing and trusting and walking that out. And I think that's one thing I had stopped doing, is that I was just so reliant on myself. Even though I prayed, I went to church, I did all these things, but you can leave there and still get in your car and start worrying and fretting over the same thing that you were worrying and fretting about before you walked in the door.
Yeah. It's so common. So, and I think it's very, I went to church growing up. Like I've seen this a lot through my own experience, through clients. Like, I don't think that people, at least like Christian church people, which is what you and I can speak to, I've never seen a lot of like, here's how to embody this. Here's how to actually do this, like put this into practice, which is why I usually, as long as they're open to it, I have a lot of my clients read Outrageous Openness, because it's this like very silly, very short, but very powerful little book that's spiritual. It's not, she's a professed lover of all religions and all like deities. She's here for all of it. That actually gives you a lot of like tangible stories about here's how and what it would look like if every day you were in conversation with your version of a higher power and you were actually just like giving it up and letting go and not taking full responsibility for how things are unfolding and like handing over your worries. And you did such a good job of implementing that. Like and this is what I have a lot of people do. And I've talked about this on the podcast a couple times before, but I'll usually have people read that book and then I'll have them start a daily log. One thing, that's it. Your only goal is just one thing. You always came back with more than one thing, overachiever, but I liked it. Just one thing a day of evidence that, however you want to say it, the universe has my back, that I am supported, that things are working out for me, whatever. And little things, sometimes really big events, obviously, but oftentimes it's just little bits of magic and synchronicity that make you feel supported or make you feel like less alone throughout your day. And you did such a good job of really sticking with that for like weeks and weeks and months. You were doing this. And I told you, if you do this for a few weeks, you will see a complete change
Mhm.
like in your life. And damn if you didn't prove me completely right. So I would love if you can recall some of the things that you wrote on that list that ended up happening once you started kind of paying attention.
What I did, I made a decision that I was going to, I would read at least one story a day, you know. And what it did, it kind of planted in me this, when I wake up in the morning, of course we have agendas, we have things that we plan to do, but I'm such a planner, right? And so I said, I'm going to free myself from that. And I'm just going to let the day unfold as it unfolds, as it's intended to. And so there will be, God, that was during the time too when I had my roof replaced. And I mean, there were just things that everything was just like working out so good. And then even if something didn't go right, I could see the reason why it didn't go right, but something else, because something else needed to happen in its place.
Mm-hmm.
And so it then it kind of became a game where I said, okay, I'm just going to get up and see what happens today. And I would go to the store, I would be thinking about something or like, oh, I need to get whatever. And then I'd go and I'd be like, I walk down this random aisle. I'm like, oh my God, that's what I'm looking for right there. And I know that may sound trite or like insignificant, but after small things like that happen more frequently, it kind of builds your trust, confidence, trust that, you know what, I don't have to worry about things so much. Everything's going to work out however it's supposed to. And so, even though I complain about the tech world that I'm in right now, I pretty much given up on looking for. I applied for several different jobs in the project management space, and I go through these interviews and go to two or three, and either you get the thanks but no thanks, or no return call or whatever. So a lady reached out to me. She found me on LinkedIn, and she's like, "Hey, I want you to apply for this job." And I said, "No, I'm not. I don't want to." She's like, "Kim, you're going to be a perfect fit for it." And long story short, I went on the interviews. I ended up getting the job, and I was on my way to meet a friend. And she called me. She's like, "Well, I told you you got the job, and you know they're going to pay you more than what I quoted you, and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh my God!" And that was like that. That was a Friday, and that Saturday morning, I woke up again, just waking up, letting the day unfold however it does. And I woke up with this thought of, you know what, I think I'm going to go to New Orleans.
And you don't live in New Orleans. Like,
no. And I thought, I'm going to go to the Essence Festival, this annual event. Well, because of COVID, it hadn't happened for a couple of years, but every July 4th weekend in New Orleans, there's this big event called Essence Festival. And I thought, well, before I start the job, because I was supposed to start in July, I'm going to go to Essence Festival. And so I went ahead and I kind of booked my hotel room. And then I was sharing with a friend of mine that, hey, I think I'm going to go to New Orleans. And he's like, well, I think Elaine is going to go. You should check with her and, see what she's got planned. So I called her up and she sent me over her flight itinerary. I was able to get on the same flight with her and going and coming. We didn't stay in the same hotel. And we booked our concert. I got my concert tickets, sat very close to where she was sitting. Everything was just going swell. We get there that Friday night, and I leave my room. I'm like, I'm going to hit Bourbon Street, and first place I go into, I'm just kind of. So I'm at this one called Razoo's. I'm at this one spot. My friends that I came with, they went to a concert. I didn't want to go to the concert, so I'm like, we'll connect after the concert. I go to Razoo's. I walk around. I meet this guy. And we kind of hit it off. We laughed, we talked. And then we actually just ended up hanging out pretty much the whole weekend. Still spent time with my friends that I went with. So my time was divided between hanging out with him and his friends and hanging out with the ladies that I went with. And so I thought, well, maybe we'll see each other before the year is out. We'll keep in touch or whatever. And we've actually been kind of seeing each other, and we're still seeing each other 6 months later. We're going to bring in the new year together.
Oh my God, I'm so excited.
And he lives in another state.
Yeah, you guys are like a pretty significant distance away, right?
Yeah, we're in a different time zone.
Yep.
And so I live in one state. We met in New Orleans. He lives somewhere else. So it's really kind of...
You don't live there. He didn't live there. It was a random encounter at a place because you chose to go off in a separate direction and follow, as my friend Joanna says, follow your sparkle. You just followed your sparkle into this place, and there happened to be this man there. And like, easy, right?
Yeah. And I told him, I was like, God, I said, this is going to sound crazy too. I said, I feel like I've met the male version of myself.
That can go either way. That can be a great thing or it can be dangerous.
Well, exactly. But we just, and when I say that, we get along. Now, we've had some bumps in the road since we first met, but for the most part, we get along really well. He gets me, I get him. It's fair. It's easy. And I really like him, and we it's still going, and we just, neither one of us planned this. It's different if you go on a dating site and you intend to meet someone and it works out or it doesn't work out. I had no plans. I mean, I didn't go there. I didn't go to New Orleans for that. I went to go have a fun time before I started my new job. So that's all great. However, my job didn't start until August. Mm-hmm. And I was actually getting very frustrated about that because it gave me a start date of like July 5th or 6th or something.
Yeah.
And God, that things just kept dragging on with the background check. And I'm like, look, I know I'm good. I don't know why this is taking so long. Well, unfortunately, in a 2.5-week period, my mother lost 2 brothers and a sister.
Oh gosh, that was such a crazy 3 weeks you had.
July was really hard. So I ended up going to like my uncle's funeral on a Thursday, my aunt's on a Friday, and then my uncle passed shortly after that, and then I went to his funeral. And so I was like, well, I'm kind of glad I didn't start the job because this allowed me the time to be with my family. And even my friend that I met, I mean, he was, even though he was out of state, I mean, he actually ended up coming to visit me in between that time. And he was just like a shoulder. I'm just so glad I met him and had him there as well. He's very supportive. So July and August were kind of a crazy month. I mean, it started out on a high note, but then it ended with all the tragedy and the loss. So, so that's why I say, even when the timing seems off or when things don't work out, I've learned to submit to that and not try to force anything, because I was really getting frustrated. Like, why haven't they called me? Why is this taking
I got a lot of angry emails in that time. Like, Rachel, I'm so mad. Why won't they just, I'm worried. Maybe this is all going to fall through. And I think I told you, listen, this is what happens. Like, you don't build faith by like not having it tested and stretched at times.
Yeah.
And like, obviously all those tragedies, but you weren't going to prevent them from passing. So the fact that you were able to be completely available for all of those funerals and not have to take time off of a new job or feel torn, like that was a gift.
Yeah, it was. And so I appreciated being able to be there for, and even though, like I said, my mom and I, we've had our our times with each other, but I was just happy to be there for her and my remaining aunt, because it used to be like 7 of them, and now it's just 2. And so my mom and her sister. And so that was hard, but and again, life goes on once you're done with coaching. And there's been times I've gone back and I've looked at the notes that I've kept, the sessions that we had. I go back to outrageous openness often because it feels me it gets me out of my, going back to the old Kim, going back to wanting to solve everything and fix everything and try to think through everything. And so I still go back and look at that book because it is amazing. I think the one story that was really funny to me is the person that I think they left San Francisco and went to Alaska or something like that.
To try to meet a man because the odds were so much more in her favor there. And she was just like, San Francisco is nothing but gay men. Like, I got to go to Alaska. There's 25 men to 1 woman there. I'll meet a man.
And when she goes there, she meets a man from San Francisco.
Who lived 9 blocks away from her. Because he was on vacation or something.
Yes. And so I have just, I feel like a weight has been lifted. Some things have not changed, Mm-hmm. Some people have not changed.
Some people will never change, right?
Right. And so I have. And so even those difficult situations or difficult people, I don't look at it the same. I don't carry that same weight of trying to figure out or how to make it work, how to make it right. And so I am just so grateful. I mean, I feel like I got my life back. I feel like, I got my groove back. I feel like, the Stella got her groove back. And life it's not always what you think it's going to be. Sometimes you get a bad hand or something, but you play the hand you're dealt, right? And when you change your perspective and know that it's all going to work out. Now I think between losing my uncles and aunt, I've lost a coworker I used to work with and my neighbor across the street. And so now, my thing is I'm going to just live life to the fullest. I have a new perspective and I love life now.
Mm-hmm. I just love when people feel free.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not weighed down by all this bullshit and burden anymore. And being free does not mean having no chaos in your life and no burdens and no hard times. It is exactly what you said. It is more so a mental construct than a physical reality. Freedom is, this person can't trigger me anymore because I don't have a button to push. I've dissolved so many of my triggers that I can exist in the same space and have a totally different experience.
And again, because some days I do have, I have moments. And I remember one day I turned on what always kind of makes me smile too is sometimes I'll either turn on something on Sirius XM, one of the stations I listen to, I'll turn the radio on, and I'll always hear a nugget of something that fits. It's like, oh my God, I turned this on at just the right time. And so I remember one morning I got in the car and turned the radio on, and most people I think have heard of Steve Harvey. I don't know if you haven't. Most people have heard of Steve
course.
Harvey,
I mean,
right?
Everyone's seen Family Feud at least, right?
And so he has a morning talk show, and he made this statement one day, and he said, life is too short to be waiting on somebody to act right.
Yep. That's so funny. It's
Steve
so
Harvey.
true. How many of us have done that? I swear.
But I said, oh my God. And so I think about that now. If somebody's, something's happening, somebody's acting crazy or whatever, I'm like, you know what? Life is too short to be waiting on you to act right. And so I just don't give it the energy that I used to. I just, no, I'm just not going to give that energy anymore. And I choose what I want to give energy to.
And it doesn't make you feel like less of a person or like you're not a good person if you're not. I think some people think like it's loyal to stick by everybody through thick and thin, even when they're acting a fool or whatever.
Yeah.
No, I don't think you think it reflects on you now if you don't want to give your time or energy to people who can't act right.
Mm-hmm. Right. So a lot has happened this year. I mean, I had medical stuff going on. It's just been a gamut, of things. The situation with my, after I had surgery and developing an autoimmune disease, having to start medication that, I was like, what in the world? It seems like at one point, everything was happening.
And your body had taken the brunt of so much stress. It's not surprising when it starts to riot and starts to break down and starts to scream. Like your body is the last sign that something needs to change.
Yeah.
Like if it's breaking down, then there's a lot that has preceded that breakdown.
Yeah.
Mentally and emotionally too.
Yeah. Yeah. So, with me being in the emergency room or urgent care on my birthday, in Virginia.
That's right. My gosh.
Yeah. So this year was a crazy year, and I'm so thankful that I've made it now to December, and with a totally different perspective, realizing that life throws things at you, death, illness, change of jobs, loss of friends. Life, life happens, right? But I have a quote on one of my little pictures up here, and it says, "Life is a process, and your participation is required." And with life, you have to show up. And I think I had stopped showing up. And so, again, it goes back to making a decision and making a choice. And I just make the choice that I want to show up for life.
Mm-hmm. And I think people have an idea of what that looks like. And I don't think there's a wrong idea of what that looks like, but I think sometimes people have the sense that means just like saying yes to everything and like physically putting myself out there. Like, no, showing up for life often means saying no to a lot of things and setting boundaries and like small things.
Yeah. And showing up for yourself. To your point, showing up for yourself. I think I had just become never really an introvert, but I was starting to just shut people off.
You were isolating.
I was isolating. Yes. And so that's what I mean when I said I was ready just to show up again and be my authentic self. And that was the one thing I wanted and that I liked about the relationship that I'm in now, is that I can be my authentic self and it's okay.
It's more than okay. Like, it's like why he likes you. Right?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
It's not like it's fine, I'll tolerate it. It's like, no. This is why I'm drawn to you, is because you are you, and you were this is it. Like, you were your shiniest, most in your essence. No pun intended. Self.
Right. Yep.
That weekend. And like, it's not a coincidence that people are drawn to you like a magnet when you are out and about in the world. And that doesn't mean, it can mean virtually or in person. It's an energy that you give off.
That's exactly it, Rachel. That's exactly it. Because he's like, God, I wish I had met you a couple of years ago. Where have you been? And I was like, no, it wouldn't have worked if you had met me a couple of years ago.
You wouldn't have recognized me a couple of years ago.
It wouldn't have worked. I would not have shown up the way I showed up now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, one last question. I'm just curious to see how you would phrase this. What does having your groove back feel like?
Lightweight. I mean, you're a lightweight, you know. It's like I've said, I can be myself unapologetically. I don't have to worry. I don't have the weight of worry. I mean, of course, we're humans. We still have to
Yeah.
think about stuff that's, but I'm saying, but I don't have that weight. I I don't know, Rachel. It's just I don't have one good word other than I'm free to be me. I'm just free to be me, and knowing that that's okay. It's enough. When it's time to change something, I can do that. If I want to say no, I say no. If I want to say yes, I say yes. Um, just feels good.
Yep. There was no wrong answer to that question. I just wanted to hear, because I think everyone would define it differently, but I wanted to hear how you define that. And I think that's a good definition. Like, I am free to be myself, and that's more than enough for anybody. And I know that can sound cliche. That can sound like something you're reading off the menu that you're not eating. But I want people to really think about, no, that is, I think she's totally right. That is what having your groove feels like. That if I am just me, no pretense, no people pleasing, no trying to be or pursue or fit myself into a box I don't fit in. I am just showing up completely as I am, and people like it, and people want to be around it. And I'm attracting jobs that align with me, and friends and romantic partners that align with me. Yeah. That's what being in the groove looks like and feels like.
Yeah.
So congratulations. You did it. And I know.
Thank you. Thank you.
I know you're a work in progress. We're all a work in progress. But what I like, and I think I'm pretty confident saying this, I think it would be impossible for you to ever lose your groove again to the same degree. You know too much. You can't go back.
No, I won't. Once it's like I don't know why I want to say earlier, like getting out of quicksand, And so when you step on solid ground, and you can just walk on solid ground, and just knowing that I'm okay. And again, not every day is Sunday, not every day is sunny skies, but again, I know other people that feel like they have to conform to what somebody else thinks or believes, and they feel stuck. And sometimes they'll try to put that off. What do you call that when they try to put that off on you?
Project it onto you.
Project it. Yes. And so it's like, man, you need to get unstuck. You need to get out of that. But no, I will say this too. Doing the homework sometimes it's like, God, no one likes to do the homework, but you have to do the work. You have to do the homework. It pays off, and you learn so much about yourself, and it's worth it. This is the best investment I've ever made. And I'm good at betting on myself. I'm good at taking a chance. This was and I'm not just saying this, this was really the best investment that I've made in my life.
Well, I mean, I love a good testimonial, and I'm not asking her to say that, but I will I will receive that. And that makes me so happy, because I am probably, when we're talking about work, I am never more in my groove than when I'm talking to someone, like when I'm having a coaching conversation with someone like you, especially like someone who really wants to do the work. And so when you get two people in a room who really want to be there, one wants to do the work, one wants to help them do the work, and I'm in my groove when I'm helping you get into your groove, it's hard for things not to change. It would be weird if they didn't. When you get two people who are aligned working on the same project together and the project is you, like things change.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it's worth it. I mean, I would look forward to the time together. And when you can see yourself evolving, initially it's hard because you're doing you're going deep inside and having to pull stuff out that you didn't want to
don't want to look at that
out.
But
being on the other side now. And so what's also funny real quick is that I have a cousin whose name is Rachel. And here lately, I don't know how it happened, but she and I have connected. And so she's a few years younger than me. I'll just say she's a few years younger than me, but we are so aligned with some things right now. And so it's so funny how we have just connected and we share things with each other. And I mean, it's just incredible how that relationship has blossomed. Yes. And so, I mean, no one can tell me that whatever's meant for you is for you. If you haven't seen it manifest or if it hasn't come forth yet, just keep living, keep walking, because it will work out.
Yeah.
It will.
Your responsibility, if we want to take responsibility, okay? What we take responsibility for is getting out of our own way. If we want to make our lives easier, if we want things to happen faster, we have to do the work of getting out of our own way. Because like you were the reason you weren't in the groove. Like no one was keeping you from the groove. It was you.
That's right. That's right. I was in my head so much too.
Yeah. Well, that's what. That's it.
Yeah. I was in my head. I was just in my head. I was stuck, and I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and I didn't know how to handle stuff, and so I just keep it moving now.
Yep.
I just keep it moving, and with the job, it's good for now. I don't know what's going to happen with that, but for right now, it's good. I've actually started me a little side gig as well, because I still need that social. I need interaction with people. And so working from home is great, but it's like, I just need to interact with people. So I started me a little side gig, and, that brings me joy for right now. We'll see what happens with that. So
everything is for now anyway.
Yeah.
And you trust that when the next move when it's time to make the next move, you'll know, you'll be guided.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like it'll be obvious. It'll just flow.
Right. Because that's how it's been going. And
exactly.
Yeah. Keep it moving.
Okay. On that note, Kim, this has been such a good conversation. I could talk to you for obviously like 2 hours, but got to cut it off at some point. So that's a good place to tie a bow on it. Keep it moving, folks.
Keep it moving.
Thank you so much for being my first interview with a normal person of 2023. It was a great way to kick off this year. And I feel like this is such a great time for people to hear it because they have all year. Like if you want to, like we're recording this in December. So once you're hearing this, it'll be January. Like if you want to be where Kim is at in December, you have all year to make that happen. Like, and that's kind of where my trajectory was we probably met around a year ago. And your whole 2022, just like from beginning to end, slowly shifted to where you are now. So
it did.
Thank you for being an example that hopefully someone will hear. And maybe because they heard it, they'll be in your shoes in December of 2023.
I hope so. I hope so. Everyone deserves this. Everyone deserves this.
This is our natural state. This is where we should be living all the time. So thank you for being just one more person who's showing that it is possible for normal people to be happy and to feel aligned and to be good at riding the ups and downs of life and just enjoying themselves. So, all right, well, keep me posted. I can't wait to hear how things continue to unfold.
And please, if you're listening, share a comment. Like, I'm sure Kim would love to hear how you resonated with this episode, and I'll make sure she sees your comments and pays attention to them. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Kim. Talk to you later.
All right.
Well, if you resonated with any of that conversation, which I have a strong sense that you will, and you're like, yeah, I want to get my groove back, I want to make some changes in 2023, then you're in luck because we are in one of those, or we will be in one of those phases where we take on new clients starting next Friday. We're giving you a week's notice so you can be thinking about it, maybe doing a little bit of reading up on our process.
Telling your spouse who is reluctant and doesn't believe in the power of coaching that they are dumb and they need to get on to your page.
Maybe don't start with you're dumb. It's not great for buy-in, but we can think it.
You can think it.
Yeah, get it. Planting some seeds in your own head and maybe in others' heads as well, that this might be the right time for you to start making some of your own changes. So we only take on coaching clients a few times a year. This is not a thing that's just always available.
And only a small amount at a time, because everyone's time and ours is finite.
So we're taking on a small group of new clients. Think about it. Make sure that you check out the one-on-one coaching page on our site so you can read all about it. We'll link to it in the show notes so you can easily go find a little bit of upfront info to at least determine, do I want to have a conversation about this?
Yeah. You can also just go to clarityonfire.com/coaching.
Exactly. And if you do want to have a conversation, we're going to have the form available next week where you can reach out, and no pressure. This is just, hey, I'm pretty seriously thinking about this. Let's chat about it.
Am I a good fit? Are you going to ask me the same questions everyone else asks me? Which is, but I think I'm uniquely uncoachable. Tell me how I am different. Like, everyone thinks they're so different. I'm like, no, you're not.
Every time they're like, yeah, but can you really fix my problems?
And I'm like, you're not that special. Like,
after you've been coaching for a decade, I don't believe that anymore.
Believe it. Just don't. I just don't. So anyway, okay. Keep that in mind. Know this. Be prepared. And we will be back next Friday with a brand new side chat. And I think you're really going to want to hear this one because this is like our most up to date 2023 current thoughts about how to get a career, not just a job, a career you love.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Okay, bye.